And I'm just making some last minute adjustments here. How's everybody feeling today?
Excellent.
Great.
Awesome.
I thought you were talking to the audience. Great.
No, I was feeling.
Fantastic.
No, I was talking to you. Yeah, I was talking to you guys, you
All
three.
right.
All right, well, glad to have you on. Looks like we're just about to see the screen come up. I think I do see the screen coming up. That's great news. Okay, I'm gonna check my LinkedIn here and make sure that we can that you can see us and hear us. And then I'm gonna double check right now. Again, if you're already signing in, go ahead and hit that like button or maybe even the applause button. Let us know you're glad to be here. Let us know where you're signing in from. We're going to have an interactive discussion over the next hour. We're going to be exchanging ideas. And part of the ideas will be coming from you in the audience. So we look forward to that. And I'm about to announce or introduce our panel here momentarily. Let me just make sure that I have us online and live here. I'm checking it now. And again, if you're already on, let us know you're here. Okay, looks like it's building up, guys. Oh, I love it. So Joe says hi. So can you hear us, Joe? Can you hear us loud and clear? Hopefully
Hi, Joe.
you can. All right. So today, if you're looking for a place to talk about nurse retention, then you're in the right place. Okay, we've got some great guests to talk about this. Joe, if you can, please tag in our guest, if you will, so that their network knows that they're on and live. Hi, Joanne. So just first off, we've got Holly Kalua, and she's at the top left-hand corner. We have the top right-hand corner. We have Noelle Kohles, and we have Casey Smith at the bottom. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you.
Glad to have all of you today. And you guys are handpicked nurse leaders, former nurse leaders, those who have been in the trenches and leading teams. And of course, Casey at the bottom, you're doing it currently. I'd love for each of you to talk about your experience briefly on a quick round robin. Let's start off with Holly at the top, then Noelle, and then Casey.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been a nurse for 35 years and have incredible experiences. And so I know what it's like to be retained or not. So I'm here to support you and your success. That's been my favorite part is mentoring staff, supporting them both in their personal and professional life.
That's awesome. 35 years. You don't even look 35 years old, Holly.
Thank you, Rollis.
Go ahead,
Aging
Noelle.
like fine wine. Hi, everybody. I'm Noelle Kohles. I've been a nurse for almost 20 years in pediatric critical care, and then did my leadership in pediatric critical care as well, and have spent the last 7 to 10 years really focusing and developing on retention within the workplace and employee engagement within our staff.
Love it.
Hi, Casey Smith. I've been a nurse for 26 years. I spent the first part of the years working in critical care, just like Noelle, also working in the emergency room as well. So pretty much anything critical care. And then about 8 years in, I was asked to move into leadership, really into a nursing operations role, which I really loved. And so here I am still doing it 20 years later.
Awesome. Well, glad to have all of you on the show today. Really appreciate you guys taking your time out of your busy schedules to join us and be with us here today. And those of you in the audience, we love that you're here today as well. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here. We want to make sure it's time well spent on your end. We also want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, your comments, your feedback as we go along throughout this discussion. We'll also be entering in some fun stuff as we go along. We like to keep things fun as we take this very serious topic, and we'll take little breaks throughout the process. So we have a few people already signing in. We have Jennifer David, hello, coming in for Orlando. We've got Jonathan Probetz coming in from the UK. Welcome. Oh, hey, what time is it in the UK? Thanks for joining us. We've got, so we've got quite a few that are already piping in and ready to go, ready to listen and learn and share. So thank you for being here. Let's start off with one of the first questions I wanted to cover is what's your take, or what's your main thing that facilities should be focusing on when it comes to retention, retaining nurses in more of a long-term strategy than just kind of sometimes we get caught up and can't see the forest for the trees and get caught up in just requisitions and who we're trying to keep right now. But how about the long-term strategy? How can we do better with retention? Who wants to start off with that?
Holly would love to.
Okay. All right.
Ladies first.
All right. All right. I think the long-term strategy is be a leader in an organization that the nurses can trust.
Oh, yes.
We are honing in our skills throughout the years of how to assess people, how to assess, if you're working in psych, you need to be aware of escalation and danger. So our sense of people and whether they're authentic or not, we can sense that. So be real, be authentic, be trustworthy, and mean what you say and do what you say.
Yeah. It's simple concepts, but it's not always easy to carry out, is it?
Holly, when you talk about trust, and I couldn't agree with you more, define what trust means to you. Because I think that's really helpful when you look at different environments, different organizations, and even different cultures. Trust can have a different meaning. What does trust look like for you as a leader?
Well, in my most recent role, I started off with some toxic environments, some fear, anger, short staff. So they didn't have a trust that they were being heard, taken care of, and that it was going to get better. So, first thing is establish that trust comes with a relationship and listening and not just, I hear you. Yes. How does that feel? They want to know, are you going to do something about it? And so I got to the point where they didn't have to worry about their pay, whether they're going to get ripped off or treated well. They knew I was consistent, always looking for their behalf and advocating for them. So all they had to do was just focus on doing their job and not wasting energy in wondering what's next. Because I would talk to them and tell them ahead of time, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts and where we should go? So they had the buy-in and the contribution. They were truly empowered. So
great.
I like that.
And I love that you said buy-in too, because that's so important in how you engage the buy-in.
Absolutely. And one of the things too I've heard from quite a few nurses that what's important to them is to feel like they're in a space where they can feel like they're furthering their career and moving further. And I know there's something that Casey, you and I were talking about that you've been able to kind of develop with your staff. If you can share a little bit of that with us.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Both great points, Holly and Noelle. Part of what I found moving into the leadership role and part of the motivation was actually when working in the ICU, you always see there's barriers. And this was back to the time where a lot of people began leaving for the CRNA and or NP role in the medical center here where I work. This has been going on for years. So you get a big group of new nurses and helping them, explaining to them, walking through these steps with them. I think, as you ladies said, in a very safe environment, knowing that you're the knowledgeable resource. But then when you shift to administration, now the role that I was in was over the whole facility. So therefore, you're rounding both at nighttime or during the day. You're lucky you're not in meetings all day long. So you're actually able to go and have those conversations, break down those barriers, because you have good people. They want to give care. And being that bridge between the different departments, different people in the different departments, as I think you ladies highlighted, there's different attitudes, different people. And Rallis, you had said this. So it really helps get them out of that forest. So you're back to just the saplings. And then you plant those saplings and you watch them grow in those sort of relationships. So sometimes you have to be the one that is out front directly leading to help them. Sometimes you have to be the one behind, which you like to be, and you watch them grow and kind of explore yourself. But to get there, often you have to be the one that's walking beside them, breaking down those barriers and helping that. So I found just with the development of my team, in that initial leadership role I was in, we had about 10 other, either they were really strong charged nurses. I know we'll talk about the clinical ladder, RN4s that we brought into this role. It was an operations administrator role over the facility. And those people, over the 12 years I was in that role, about 8 of them actually went on to be directors elsewhere within the system themselves.
Nice.
And so that thing they didn't think they wanted to do, But when they got to actually see, it's not just meetings and analytics and that sort of stuff. This is where you can really get out and connect with your people and really begin to drive. And that's what they really want. That's what they really enjoy. Sometimes it is as literal as hands-on. Sometimes it's literal as they want to call you and just blow up at somebody on the phone and say, thanks, I feel better. And then you hang up the phone. And then, of course, you go around and round and make sure everything's okay. And they didn't do that to anybody else. But that the fact that they feel comfortable for you, then you have your conversations with them about, this is how I would handle it if I was calling your leader. I'm okay, and thank you for trusting me to call me with this, but this is how I would present this to your leader. So I think you have opportunities every day, and that's how I like to look at it, and I like to handle it. It's been pretty successful.
I like that career. I can't say it. I like that career progression you mentioned because, I've talked to several nurses that sometimes feel like they have to leave in order to grow. Like they have to go somewhere else to get that next position or to get that promotion or what have you. And it's really sad because a lot of cases they could have just stayed there, but because there wasn't that open line of communication and they felt like they needed to go somewhere else, they end up leaving. So tell us, like whenever you're onboarding someone for the first time, bringing them on, how soon do you bring up this whole conversation about career progression? Are you waiting 90 days in? Are you waiting a year in? When are you having these conversations, Casey?
So you're actually a little late to the dinner table there. I actually talked to you about it when I interview you, because that's part of what I really want to know what you're coming here for. The facility I'm at, where those of you in nursing know what Magnet is. We are the first Magnet facility, not only in Texas, but we're a 5-time Magnet facility. So there's about 6,700 hospitals in the country. About 8% of them can become Magnet.
Love
and
it.
Less than 3% become 5-time Magnet. So therefore, you're in a very good learning center. I mean, all the all the hospitals here are very, very good.
Yes.
It's that discussion that you have, and exactly what you said, how Rallis 90 days is if your attendance is fine, if your clinical performance is good during your orientation. So for my ICU nurses, then we start having a discussion. A lot of them want to learn these different devices, CRRT, IABP, ECMO is generally the last one. And when I moved into the ICU, that was the path that I followed. And I found, some people, as you said, Rallis, they may be unhappy with the environment, unhappy with the people they work with. Really, they're looking for something else and they may leave. But for the people that I've had for this, it's done really well. And then you're in a large facility. You're not in a small 100-bed hospital with, very few departments and very few people in these different departments. There's lots of people. So you continue along that path, and then we can see and we can explore where else you can go as well.
That's awesome. Holly, I wanted to ask you something. You mentioned toxic. And I love Noelle's follow-up question, what she asked about the trust, I believe. But let's go. Describe for me what that's like. So give me an example of what a toxic environment would be, and then ways you would suggest to help to turn that around.
Okay. I do want to applaud Casey too for all the work you've done, and I love that you walk alongside. And
wait, Holly, can we do that for him? Let's give him thanks for
yes.
doing that. Let's give him a little bit of applause. He deserves it. There we go.
All right. So
Okay.
The toxic environment, it's toxic for different reasons. Sometimes they're short-staffed, so they're overworked. Everyone's stressed, nipping at each other, and they're just not feeling the love anymore. Sometimes it's toxic because it's rolling downhill. And so you have to identify, is it people, process, policy, what is the toxicity? And then you have to just straight out, call it out, identify it. And because that's, I told the staff, okay, do you enjoy this environment? Do you enjoy feeling like and we had many conversations. They're like, no, but, and I said, okay, it's all on me now. I'm taking care of it. I'm going to get you staff. You're heard. And, so there's a little bit of progression, but administration, you save so much money on turnover. If you listen, you staff. We had a waiting list where people literally are waiting for 6 months for someone to retire because that environment was so supportive, and that the culture of safety, being able to to speak your mind, make suggestions, and be brought into processes.
I appreciate that. That's good. So describe for us. You know what? Before we do that, I want to make sure. I want to make. I got some more folks coming with comments. I want to make sure I acknowledge them. So we've got Patty's coming in. Hi, Patty from Alabama. We've got Wanda coming in from Long Beach, California. Welcome. And so thank you for that. So going back to our discussion here, as far as a ladder is concerned, because I've heard people use that term like a ladder or a career progression. What does that typically look like from your experience? Maybe each of you can comment on this. What does that typically look like in terms of a natural progression throughout a nurse's career? Let's kind of start with the hospital setting.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Sure, go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I can start, and it'll probably piggyback off to something similar to Casey's experience. So at my previous employment back out in California, again, worked for like an amazing institution, magnet, clinical ladder, the whole 9 yards, and also had the experience of working in an organization that didn't have the clinical ladder. So it was very helpful to see being in two organizations that have two different, methods, one trying to achieve to get there and another one who's been there at that point for several years. And the clinical ladder, when I started out as a new grad, and I was literally born and raised in the same institution out in California, it was new grad nurses all start out as a CN1. So it's a clinical nurse 1. By 1 year, they automatically graduate and become a clinical nurse 2, which means that after a year you've been there, you've got experience on your belt, you would stay a clinical nurse 2. In order to get to a clinical nurse 3, there's certain aspects that you would have to apply into and participate in, shared governance, projects on the unit, and sort of take on this leadership role in order to be a clinical nurse 3. If you apply into it and you put the criteria and the qualifications that you need to go into it there, then you would become a clinical nurse 3. You would also get a certain % raise going into that. In order to obtain, because you don't just get something, you're like, hey, here you go. And you're like, woohoo, that's it. You have to continue, like a certification, you have to continue to earn that because you're giving back to being at that level. So every year there's certain expectations as a leader that you have to uphold to stay, to stay as a clinical nurse 3. To be a clinical nurse 4, that does go into the permanent charge nurse supervisory role. You have to apply in that separately, and it's a different FTE where I came from, and you would have to get hired into that. And unless somebody, resigns or is removed, then you could apply into that. But what's helpful in this, I'm thinking, Casey, you could probably relate to this too. I'll let you speak after. What's very helpful for a clinical ladder is that you have stages of leadership. When you're in an organization that doesn't have a clinical ladder, oftentimes you have your group of nurses, which includes your charge nurse, then a nurse manager, or sometimes right to the director, who is your nurse manager, who is your clinical leader, who then becomes everything, and there's no onion to peel back from. That's the point where you get very lean, and it's very difficult, I find, to retain and have your fingers on the pulse of nurses that you want to stay when you're a one-man show that should be divided into about 3 to 4 different people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that look similar at your organization, Casey? Maybe you can kind of piggyback on that.
Yeah, Noelle brings up a lot of good points. That's pretty much what I'm used to as well. Ours is a little bit different. As part of that RN3 role, she hit on that you have to take some classes about how to be a charge nurse, how to be a preceptor as well. You do have to be certified, and of course your clinical performance and attendance have to be very good. I think this goes back to exactly what Holly was saying as well at the beginning about, and Noelle touched on, is in those layers of the onion, you have to have some leadership there, and you become a phenomenal clinical leader. That's what I was always used to as an RN4. When I moved up, I was an RN3 looking to do my RN4. But these are projects that What I have found, Raleigh, is we use a tier method for huddles. So we call tier 1 huddle is the huddle that you have in the morning time on your unit. Part of this is education you don't usually get as a nurse, so therefore you can track issues that you're having. As Noelle said, what we do is you'll use your RN3s, your RN4s, use a simple graph that just tracks the numbers, but then you have reasons. And in your reasons underneath there, you just put X's. This happened X number of times. Well, you do a simple Pareto, and you'll be able to see what your main reasons are. And the reason why I say that along the lines of what Noelle is saying, then that's the communication you have with your manager, your director, that you as an RN3, RN4 you work on. And generally, since all of your nurses are there talking about it, everybody is invested in it. And so even if you're the one that picks it, you may not be the one doing it because, Noelle and Holly may be on days and I may be on nights. And I say, hey, ladies, I put these 3 or 4 X's up here. This happened a couple times last night. So they're there in that clinical RN3, RN4, or moving towards that. But as a unit, we're collaborating together. Whether you're short staff, it's busy, you have high acuity patients, but you have to develop that. And then usually in the morning time, many facilities have this. You have a operational meeting where people get together. You talk about safety issues, operational issues, and then you begin to surface these issues that are occurring on these unit levels from tier 1. If you're not able to handle, I don't want to say handle.
And that type of environment that they're going to want to continue to excel at their job. And I can imagine with the world being the way that it is now and everything going on these type of platforms that should exist. And hopefully that someone is thinking about that because there are so many different types of nurses. So you both brought up some great points.
I did add one level, and it's a CDI educator. So rather than pay the outside consultants to come in on a quarterly basis, tell them what the new thing is and what they should do, what we found is they leave and then they settle back into status quo workflow practice. So having a CDI educator within our team, they could hold them accountable. They would stay up on the regs. And so I saved money that way, but then that was a key factor in retaining the nurses because they feel supported.
Guys, I hate to jump in, but I don't know if did you notice I was gone?
Yes.
I did. You look great in a suit. The picture we're looking at.
I did. I didn't know if we were still live and you were gone, so I didn't want to stop the good conversation.
I mean, it was great stuff. I felt like I was a fly on the wall, and I was enjoying the couple of minutes I got when I came back. But my internet just totally went out on me, so I apologize to everyone. And hopefully they're seeing the new link. It may have created a new link. We'll see if it created a new link or not.
So I think what you need is what Holly and Noelle was suggesting. You need tiered levels, professionals of internet installers over there. You must have
on a direct line straight from AT&T to my house. It's just it takes like 30 to 60 days to install it, so that I won't have this issue going forward. But I'm just depending on however much they're using it in my neighborhood. I'm kind of subject to that. So one of those things.
Yeah, and Holly, I think to your point too about the CDI. So I've had a nurse. He had a health issue. He was a phenomenal CV nurse, and so this is kind of interesting. You look at it. You look at the skill set. You look at the value of the person. So in order to get a lot of your cardiac surgeries, cardiac procedures done, you need an echocardiogram, which is kind of like a ultrasound of your heart, if you will. So therefore, I put him up there because he was on light duty, and he began running that machine. And then main business that we have here works great for him. The facility benefited, but because then you have this person who's now up there. And so I've been in a place where you have a manager 1, a manager 2, a manager 3, same thing with the director. And so then therefore the scope of those roles route that we've gone is It's actually called normal career progression. So you're actually able to go into the HR system and do that. And then they already have built in all the various different ranges for those sort of employees or whatnot. So you make sure that you're not, paying Janie all the way up here and John all the way down there. And then you have a pay inequality issue if they were to bring it up.
Right. That's great.
So I'd like to jump in here and let's try and give away a book or something because this group, I got to applaud them. They actually followed us to the new link. It created a new link, by the way, so some of them are probably just not coming back to what just happened. So we're going to do a word, and you're going to do the each letter for each comment, and you're going to spell out a word for me. When I say go ahead and spell it out. And then hopefully by that time, our internet will be fixed totally. I'm getting some red right now, but hopefully we'll be back 100%. We'll win a copy of one of our books, and I'll put them up on the screen for you. And the good thing, too, guys, we did record this for the portion that we missed. Okay. Reflection of reality of the RN 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then leadership and all of that. Just based on your years of service as a leader working in hospitals, should that system be adjusted or is it working perfectly? 20.
I'll look at the one who's I'm looking
of the actual facility and how we define this. So therefore, we actually have an RN5 role, which when I started nursing, and you guys may remember, are generally a master's degree. I haven't seen them yet progress up to needing a PhD degree, but however, that's more defined by the facility that you're at, those sort of levels. And then you move to an RN1, and then you move to an RN2, and RN3s were kind of the clinical nurse specialists. So I wouldn't get so hung up on the numbers of how they do that. I would look more closely with either the HR and or the leader of that department, ACNO, CNO, however you're structured, about what exactly they want in that role. That I think gives clarity to your current staff. That gives clarity to the directors when, say Noelle applies with me and she wants to come here. There's been a couple travel nurses that we've had just from their attitude, and then assessing their knowledge base and then going and watching them perform on the unit. I would bring them in as an RN4 hands down. Now, internally, you have to go to committees. As the lady said, you have to develop some QA projects, stuff like that. However, this person's already very knowledgeable of it because their practice is so strong. They understand what needs to be done. And so we speak to them about it. They're already there and they're already visually looking and checking on your other people. Oh, make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. So that's a natural clinical leader. You see them sometimes, not all the time. So they obviously came from a very well-structured environment that was very focused on the basics of high quality care. So therefore, you could bring them into your organization at whatever to do that. And luckily, I've worked with my two nurse execs I've worked with here have been very much like that. You make the case for them, and then you can move that forward from there.
And I love how you said that too, because it really is not by because a clinical nurse specialist, that the administrator, the supervisor on the unit from a clinical standpoint.
That feels like there isn't a chance for you to move up. There isn't a ladder. You can always go to your director. When I started in first job, skilled nursing, back in my day, that's how it went. And I was concerned that I was passing meds greater than 2 hours out to meet with the physicians on rounds, do this, do that, and have the LVNs continue to pass. And so she added that FTE, and I moved in that position and open your current organization's eyes.
When you map out, that's part of why I went ahead and got my black to help people with those workflows, as you said. So that sounds like it may be a workflow issue, depending on what it is. So you can map that out, work with the staff, work with them, and then demonstrate some value add. I mean, that's the administrative talk, but me as the clinician, I can get what I
So
I haven't
they needed another nurse. So yeah.
Wow.
Okay, Kohles, welcome back to your show.
No, I love it. This is great. You guys have some great synergy going between you. I love this. So let's try. Let's go with the word, and we're gonna spell out that word. The first one to spell that word out without being interrupted. We're going to use is stream and go. So while they're doing that, to conserve or save that others might find peculiar.
Could be anything.
Anything.
What are you extra careful to save
Yes.
that others can procure?
I can say I like to drink coffee, and people often make fun of me because my coffee may sit there for 10 hours and I'm still drinking it. Bad cream, but I think that's probably the thing that people, oh my God, I can't believe you're drinking that. Didn't you get that this morning? Oh, and it's still good.
That must be a nurse's thing too, because I can totally relate to that. I'm a Starbucks girl, but I get my chai lattes. I don't drink coffee, but I will drink it the next day. Like I won't even.
Ooh,
Oh yeah. But by 8 hours, if it's still out, I'll just put it in the refrigerator and then save it till the next day, warm it up, and it's good as new for me.
For
Awesome.
CMS, covered it in your hydration station.
Yes, I love it.
Oh yes, definitely. I think as a nurse, you only have so much time. And if your break is, although my dentist got after me and said, you can't sip on coffee all day long, that's not good for your teeth. So my peculiar thing, I would say during COVID, I'm better at using the last squares on the roll of toilet paper. And I really encourage my family.
Okay, before I forget, I finally found one of the questions in the old stream, the first stream we had. And Wanda Jones, she asked, why do you think many hospitals have gone away from the assistant manager position? What are your thoughts on that?
That's an awesome question. Who is that? That Wanda?
Wanda Jones, yes.
There's a lot of overlap depending on the organization between an assistant nurse manager, a CN4, and a nurse manager. And I could say that because I can relate, because I was at one point, and some almost cliche in saying it's too many hands in the pot. And when you pull away and you actually clearly define the roles between a CN4, even or definition between what people do and how they can help, because with an assistant nurse manager, in my experience, it was great. Well, the work is, and that can get very confusing.
Good point, Noelle. And Rollis, I think you deal with this looking at the different positions and stuff, accountable. And so therefore I'm removing this role creates a lot of noise. And what I mean by that is you do not have how your supplies are delivered. You have challenges with how that's a bar that they just don't have being. You keep going down in terms of realizing your employees. And Noelle, and I say that was her role. She went, what's going on? Oh, it was a busy day. I meant to get to it. That's places where you have a secretary doing time and a lot of stuff that role is.
And too, because exactly what Casey just said, and it really, it's going to depend on fusion and
managers without having
We just had like a myriad of streaming issues today. We're going to continue on the full experience where they can ask questions as we go along. Make sure we get all of your questions answered.
I've
never mattress surfaced. I have, or I've never. See if they can guess on whether you have or you've never. And so Sally Hart, she says, think I've completely lost. Yeah, it kind of stopped to get back better again.
I do not recall doing that. Just
How about she's very specific.
That's why I was laughing.
No, I think generally in college, just because that was hard concrete wall.
Right. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. I was just not going to say no one, but virtual.
And they did awesome, and we just kept going with her.
On the Zoom recording, I had it recorded to the cloud there. At the very least, this is an incredible test run for the next. Have actually,
and following it through a new link too, came from beginning.